I hasten to add, but of course. Have to have humour in life. You don't want everybody boo-hooing, but you have to have humour, but to realise it's a balance of everything of life. So I'm reading from chapter 6, which is Rising Above Grief. It's called Love, Caring and Sharing. This was channeled through me on the 10th of April 2011. The soul is but an actor upon the stage of life. The stage set is life, and the soul makes a pact with the divine director. Who is this director? The divine, oneness with all that is. Love, caring and sharing. We as humans have forgotten the essence of these words and are so used to running around in a shallow quest for materialism that we've created for ourselves. The year of 2009 was particularly emotionally challenging for me. I lost my darling father in May and my beloved dog Cosmo in October. I'm guided in spirit to share my innermost thoughts to help others who are suffering through the process of grief. It's now 2 years since my darling father, Sydney, transitioned from his physical body. Only now can I put pen to paper to release the final grief and sadness that had been held tightly in place and is now like a snake unfurling itself from a tightly coiled sleep. All the time I was channeled with thoughts and a deep knowing of everything unfolding at the pace that it was meant to be, and I gave myself full permission to breathe. The total process of loss and grief brings the realization that once our loved ones have left their bodies, we who are left behind on this physical realm are the ones who find it so hard to let go, even though we know that our loved ones are no longer suffering. Once we've experienced the death of a loved one for the first time, there is a gradual understanding that nothing will ever be the same. We've gained entry to an exclusive club with a guarantee of a lifetime membership. We humans are the ones who continue to suffer, as that is the part of the human legacy. It takes great strength and courage to let go and realize that grief is a process. We who live in the West are so conditioned to a sterile death, usually in a sterile hospital bed, hooked up to machines, monitors and hospital restrictions. I have total respect and admiration for hospice and the people who work there. When entering hospice, the patient has a prognosis of being terminally ill. The decision has been made to end medical intervention, except to relieve pain and keep the patient as comfortable as possible. In hospice, you are cocooned and lovingly cared for. Families can bond and say their farewells in a safe and loving space. I liken the hospice experience to being softly blown in by a gentle gust of wind. You gently float along until a stronger gust of wind propels and pushes you out to the other side. It's such a delicate process. We're not consciously aware of it at the time. It's the afterthought that comes to mind at a later date. Up to the last 100 years or so, people were born at home and died at home. Most people experience the beginning and the end of the cycle of life and death, surrounded by loved ones that welcome them into the world, followed by the shared experience at the end of the passage of life, surrounded by beloved family and friends. Later, the whole town or village would take part in the funeral rites. During the era of Queen Victoria of England, often called the Victorian era, those of you who don't know, the Victorian era, people celebrated and accepted death. Queen Victoria lost her beloved Prince Albert, and instead of grieving privately, showed the world their love and devotion to each other with a state funeral. Others were inspired to follow her funerary example, with black carriages, black horses with matching black plumes, and interments in mausoleums, which became part of the culture of death at that time. In ancient Egypt, the afterlife culture took precedence over life in the here and now. The pharaohs built pyramids, burial tombs and chambers with interior colours of turquoise and terracotta, with mummification were de rigueur for burial. The organs were mummified separately and kept in separate pots from the mummy. There would be food offerings for the journey to the other side, with gold, jewellery, precious stones and anything valuable that was deemed necessary for the journey. Cats were highly revered, and they too were buried with their beloved master or mistress after they died. But in the Far East, death is not feared. It's accepted as part of life's natural cycle. like the ebb and flow of water gently undulating on the shore of the ocean. Families united in the letting go process tend to lean on each other and talk about their feelings. Even when there is an understanding of the process of leaving the physical body, there's still the grief process to transcend. In some areas of the Far East, the physical body is not cremated immediately. For example, in Thailand, family, friends, and monks celebrate their loved ones with music, prayers, and food offerings from anywhere from 7 to 100 nights prior to cremation, dependent on the status in society. So you see, it doesn't matter what belief system you resonate with. It's just the fact, did you feel as you feel? Religion is there for the rite of passage, whether it's birth, marriage, or death. The grieving process offers no finite rite of passage, just the realization that however you want or need to grieve, that is the process that you have to go through. The need to grieve manifests differently in each person. There's no set pattern or timeline. When one hears the diagnosis of a loved one who has a life-threatening illness, the shock and disbelief translates into a total nightmare of initial fear. When one is given a timeline to digest the news, there are different ways of dealing with it. This knowledge initiates a form of pre-grieving. There is something that the mind knows it will have to deal with at a future date. But a form of blanking off occurs too. There is the awareness in the subconscious mind and in all the cells, an awareness of an imminent feeling of loss, but not the total reality of the whole situation. This is something I became aware of with my father's diagnosis of colon cancer. The same effect transpired with Cosmo's diagnosis too. Somehow your loved one will always be there, except that they won't always be there in physical form. Although we know that we will all have to leave our physical body, it always seems to be at some time in the future. Eventually we have to face it. The future becomes the now. There is also the other side of the spectrum, with people who suddenly leave their physical body through a heart attack, accident, or war. The pre-grieving doesn't occur because it was totally unexpected. As humans, we don't know how long we have in this physical form, in this physical world, which is the densest energy of all the realms. This is why we need to nurture each other, love each other, care for each other. Tell whomever you have in your life that you love them. Sometimes the people we have in our lives are unemotional, cold, or distant. However, sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. One day, what you may say might just get through to them. It doesn't help if after the event you have guilt that you should have said something nice. There is not always a tomorrow, but there's always now. Live in the moment, as you will never have that moment again. Don't live in the past. You can't change the past. Some people totally live in the future. It's fine to make plans, but as we've learned and are learning, things can be pulled out from under us. Prime examples are the 2011 earthquake, then tsunami that hit Japan, as well as the political uprisings in the Middle East. The Earth is making us aware at this time through global warming and the ramifications arising from it of cause and effect, which is the law of karma. Therefore, for me, I'm lucky that my father and I had time to say everything that we wanted and needed to say to each other. There is no more time, there is just now. It's called love, caring, and sharing.